Welcome back to the Unfortunate Diehards podcast. We're happy to have you. Hashtag number 75. St. Louis Blues legend, Ryan Reeves.
Leafs legend.
No, definitely not. Welcome to our Atlantic Division ranking episode. My name is Evan. I cheer for a team in the Atlantic Division. Name the Ottawa Senators.
My name is Omar. I cheer for a team in the Atlantic Division. Name the Toronto Maple Leafs. This is the best division in hockey.
Of which it is known now that you only have 3 teams making the playoffs from.
Whoa, spoilers. You might have not watched the last episode.
That's their fault. My name is Sufyan, and I am a Caps fan. I don't really care about this division, but it's entertaining because my 2 co-hosts hate each other because of it.
Oh, cute.
All right, so just like we've done in the last 3 episodes, we're going to give you our 2024-2025 division previews, this one for the Atlantic Division. We're going to go over what each team's records were in the previous season, their key additions, key departures, and their predicted lineup going into this season next week. We'll start with the big team in the news right now, the Boston Bruins. So, the Boston Bruins last season had a record of 47 wins, 20 losses, and 15 OT losses, which was second in the Atlantic. If you guys remember our predictions from last season, I think all three of us had the Bruins missing the playoffs or something along those lines. So we were all very wrong on that.
And maybe we'll be wrong again.
Yeah. 36 regulation wins, which was 12th. They lost in round 2 of the playoffs to the Florida Panthers. 3.21 goals for per game, which was 13th. 2.70 goals against per game, which was 5th. 22.2 power play percentage, which was 14th. And an average age of 27.
So, lots of new and moving around pieces here. New additions to the forward core is Elias Lindholm, Max Jones, Riley Tuft, Tyler Johnson on a PTO, and I don't even know if I want to say Senators legend here, but Mark Kastelic did play for the Senators. Fabian Lysell, also competing for a spot. On defense, big addition, big as in this guy's 6'5". Nikita Zadorov. And then in net, they have Jonas Korpisalo, also played for the Senators. The key departures are Jake DeBrusk, JVR, meaning James Van Riemsdyk, Danton Heinen, Pat Maroon, Jacob Lauko, Jesper Boqvist, Matt Grzelcyk, Derek Forbort, Kevin Shattenkirk, and Senators legend, Linus Ullmark.
Senators preseason legend. This offense is something. They have a new first-line center in Elias Lindholm. He will be flanked by Pavel Zacha and David Pastrnak, as we've seen in preseason. Brad Marchand is going to be on the second line with either Charlie Coyle or Matt Poitras. Right now it's Charlie Coyle. And then they have Geeky on the right wing, completing their top 6. I would say there's someone else fighting for that spot, but I don't actually think there is. The other third liners they have are Trent Frederick and Justin Brazeau, who had a pretty good playoffs last year. And then you have Max Jones, John Beecher, and Mark Kastelic as their fourth line. Tyler Johnson does not look like he's making the roster, but he's still kicking around, I think, on the PTO. And then Tuft and Lysell are also fighting for spots. Lysell is a guy that could work his way into the top 6. He's their best offensive prospect. And yeah, their defense is quite possibly their strength in terms of on paper. Nikita Zadorov and Charlie McAvoy are their top pair, with Lindholm and Brandon Carlo finishing out the top 4. Lohrei and Peak are their bottom pair, and Wotherspoon is their 7th defenseman. This has been the biggest part of the news in the last little while, but Jeremy Swayman is, technically a goalie on their team, but currently unsigned. And, it looks close, but it also looks really, really far to him being signed. So who knows? But if he is still unsigned. Jonas Corposalo is going to be their starter. And then they signed like 2 guys to PTOs / pick some guys off waivers. Kaskisuo is one of them, who I have no idea who he is. And Yanni Patera, I think they just picked off waivers. He played in the NHL a year or 2 ago. But yeah, it's looking pretty dicey if Swayman is not signed.
All right, Evan.
We'll start
Let's
with
begin this.
Evan.
Where do you think the Boston Bruins?
I have the Boston Bruins in 5th. I think the Boston Bruins still have good players. Charlie McAvoy, very good. Pasternak, very good. The rights to Jeremy Swayman, very good. They have other solid players like Zaka, Marchand, Coyle, Zadorov, Lindholm, other Lindholm, Carlo, like a lot of good players. They did lose depth this offseason. They may not have a starting goalie. They went from having 2 of the best goalies in the league to maybe not either of them. So we will see what happens, but definitely worse in my opinion. I think they did add, like I said, good pieces, but for me, they're 5th in the division.
For me, they're also 5th in the division. I struggled with them a little bit when I was ranking them, but the issue with Swayman really kind of helped my situation. The reason I say that is because, yeah, I do agree they still have good players. They're coached well. They're still a threat as a team. My issue is that I think Allmark and Swayman together did kind of hide any glaring issues that they had to a great extent throughout the year, throughout maybe the last 2 years. Well, the last year, the year before, they had an insane season, so I won't say that was only Allmark and Swayman. But last season specifically, I think Allmark and Swayman would have masked some of their glaring issues, and I think this year it's looking like, well, Allmark's not there, and it could be for a few weeks, it could be for a month or 2 that they don't have Swayman, depending on how this contract situation goes, or he could be ended up traded. We don't even know that yet, but so with that uncertainty in mind, with the fact that it's not the same team as it once was, I had them 5th.
Fair enough. I will keep the theme going here, and I also have them at 5th. My reasoning, Omer kind of touched on. Essentially, the Bruins were a bottom 10 team in terms of defensive play. But they had the complete opposite situation of the Devils and Senators, where their goaltending had the complete opposite effect on the team, where it rose them to the top of the standings. And not only do you lose Allmark, you also, when Swayman does come back, if he comes back, it's his first full season as a starter. So you're asking him to essentially take the load of what him and Allmark did, but do it pretty much himself, because Korpisalo, I don't think is he can play good behind a good defense, but this team wasn't good defensively last year. I think the addition of Zadorov is okay. It makes their defense that was already big even bigger, which is cool. And the addition of Lindholm at least gives them a competent center to replace what they had a few years ago in Bergeron and Krejci. But yeah, I think Pasternak, superstar, McAvoy, elite, Swayman could be elite. But someone like Marchand as well, being 36, already declining, I think it's not going up from here for him. So I also have them at 5th. 5th, but I also think they could be worse. I don't see them being better.
All right, Evan, your X factor for the Bruins.
I love a goalie. Jeremy Swayman.
Jonas Korpisalo.
The Boston Bruins. He's got to play well, like Sufi said, as a full-time starter. He has to keep up those good stats. Look at this little hair sticking out. And so you need him to not only be an elite starter, like he has shown he could be, you need him to play more games. And if the trend, like Sufi said, continues of maybe not being the strongest defensive team, making up for those blemishes while having to play night in and night out. So he is definitely the biggest question mark on the team, and therefore is the biggest X factor if and when he returns.
I'm going to follow that. It's Jeremy Swayman. I don't know how you can not pick Jeremy Swayman right now. It's like he's not playing, and he could not play. He could be gone, and it's going to be a huge impact if he's gone. And the other question is, if he does come back, if he does play, if he plays a full season, is he going to be able to play? 60 whatever games he'll have to play, and be a starter, a legitimate starter for that long. He hasn't done it yet, so. I mean, not to say that he can't, because clearly he's a really good goalie, but he's the X factor for that, yeah.
You know what? Just so I can put it on the graphic as all of us having Jeremy Swayman, I'm also going to pick Jeremy Swayman. I don't think it's just like I could have picked someone like Lindholm as well, being that he's going to be relied upon pretty heavily, and same with Marchand as well. I think the team's got pretty mid offensive talent after Pasternak, so those two are going to be pretty important. But yeah, Swayman, it's not just his performance side of things, it's also just the relationship between him and the Bruins. I think I want to see what kind of effect that actually has on the locker room. So I think that's going to be a pretty important storyline going throughout the year. So yeah, mine's Swayman as well. I think it's this one it's quite impossible with how everything has gone in this preseason to pick anyone other than Swayman.
Alrighty. The Buffalo Sabres. Alright. So, last year's Buffalo Sabres had a record of 39 wins, 37 losses, and 6 OT losses, which was 6th in the Atlantic. 33 regulation wins, which was 14th. Missed the playoffs again. 2.98 goals for per game, 23rd. 2.96 goals against per game, which was 11th. 16.6 power play percentage, which was 29th. 79.3 PK percentage, which was 13th. Average age, 25 years old.
New additions at forward are Jason Zucker, Beck Malenstein, Capitals legend. Then we have Ryan McLeod, Sam Lafferty, and Knack. Not sure if that's a Capitals legend, but a legend in his own right. Then we also have James Reimer still kicking around as a third string. And then Yuri Kulich fighting for a bottom line role. We also have some key departures being Jeff Skinner, Matt Savoie, Tyson Jost, Eric Robinson, and Eric Comrie.
All right. The top of this lineup is looking pretty similar, except we do have some guys coming back from injury. The first line is looking like JJ Peterka taking over the spot that Jeff Skinner left. Actually, yeah, I have him there. The spot that Jeff Skinner left is now going to be filled by JJ Peterka with Thompson and Tuck. The second line of Benson, Cousins, and Quinn is quite young now that I look at it. And then Zucker, McLeod, and Greenway is a pretty good third line with Malenstein, Lafferty, and Knack as their entirely new fourth line. Peyton Krebs and Yuri Kulich are also looking for spots. They could work their way onto the team if there are some injuries. The defense is the exact same as last year, with Rasmus Dahlin and Henry Jokiharju as their top pair, and then Bowen Byram and Owen Power, who played pretty well together after Byram got traded for at the deadline. And then Matthias Samuelsson and Connor Clifton round out their top six defensemen, and Johnson and Jacob Bryson are their extras on defense. We got Uki Puki in net, Uki Puki Luukkonen, and he had a very underrated season last year. 10.18 goals saved above average is actually one of the better ones in the league. And he's going into his age 25 season. So full-time starter currently, but Devin Levi is breathing down his neck, although he had a pretty bad year last year. And then James Reimer is there if Devin Levi needs some more time in the AHL. Omer?
All right. I'll kick this one off. I have the Buffalo Sabres ending last 8th spot.
Oh,
Um, yeah, I know. It's probably a hot take. Let's call that my second hot take. I know this team consistently every year looks like they have potential and they've got some talent and they've got a hotshot D man. They've got a couple of great guys offensively. Blah 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 blah. Um, they just never really do anything, and I'm picking another team to overtake them this year. And I'm not putting them above some of the other teams in the league. I'm keeping them at 8th.
Fair enough. I have them at 6th. I contemplated having them at 5. Um, Mostly because I think Thompson is going to be more of what he was in the second half last year. And going back to more of like 85 point, 90 point guy with mid 40s and goals. I also think that Dylan Cousins is going to have a bounce back this year. I think he needs to have a bounce back this year. And I also like their offensive depth quite a lot. I think the second line is going to be an interesting one because of how young they are, but I think they'll perform adequately. The defense is where it gets a little dicey for me. It's a lot of offensive-minded players on defense. Owen Power is actually pretty good defensively, but he's, again, more of an offensive-minded defenseman. Same with Darlene, decent defensively, more offensive-minded. So I'm curious to see how well this defense works, and in that I'm pretty confident in Luukkonen with Levi or Reimer as their backups. So this is my team where if they make the playoffs, I wouldn't be surprised. But also, if they finish ahead of the Bruins, I was very close to having them finish ahead of the Bruins. So, yeah.
All right,
Ivan.
I have the Buffalo Sabres in 6th. So I think the Sabres, it's a weird team. I feel like their top 4 has a lot of potential. They were really high picks, and Darlene being like an elite player already. Thompson, like Sophie said, had a better second half, but didn't reach to what he was looking like he was going for a few years ago. So if all were to work out perfectly for them, they have Ukko-Pekka Lehkonen, who looks like he can be a really good goalie. They have Darlene and they have Thompson. They have a player at every position that can be at that level. But I could also see the scenario where Luukkonen's good but not great. Thompson maybe gets 70, 60 something points again. And Tuck maybe just sit around the same, so they don't have that for sure guy, if you know what I mean. So while I like their depth and their defense, it's not something. And something I want to add too is looking at their ages, they are so young. On defense, the oldest player is 29. After that, it's 26 with a guy that's probably not going to be in the lineup. So 25 really is a regular. On forward, they have Zucker at 32, and then it's Tuck, the second oldest, with Knack. And these are guys that, Tuck's been good, but these are guys that really never won anything or in a prevalent role. So for me, it's they added some all right players, but are they the players that are going to change around your team, making it a winning culture and bring you out of where you want to be? I don't know. And so that's why I have them in 6th.
All right, who's your X Factor?
My X Factor is Tage Thompson. I believe that Tage Thompson last year did he got injured, didn't he? Did he get injured last year?
He was hurt near the start, yeah.
He was hurt near the start. But anyway, he didn't have an amazing season last year. I think he had less than 60 points, if I'm not mistaken. So he needs a bounce back year, and if they want to make the playoffs, he needs to be like a 90-point player. Tage Thompson. Plus, honestly, the guy's he's too good to be a 50 whatever point player. He needs to be
His second half was pretty close to when his 90-point season was. My X Factor is Dylan Cousins. He finished with 30 something points last year, which is crazy after the season he had before that, which I think was 60 or I think maybe 73 points or something like that. As their second line center, he needs to bring it to at least 60, 70 points. The other thing I will say, I think that this offense being like in the low 20s or like mid 20s or whatever it was, with the power play being so bad, I don't see that happening again. Especially the power play being that bad with Tage Thompson being on that team. I definitely see an uptick in goals.
Well,
Yeah, so I think it's Dylan Cousins, and I do think this offense is going to be better next year. So yeah, keep everything I said before. I think I pretty much reached my point. I said I wanted to go, and then this guy eats an apple for 4 hours. Ugh.
My X factor is Owen Power. I think Owen Power is a strong, tall, good defenseman, but still 21, and he signed a big ticket, and I want him to continue to grow into that. And if they have a 1-2 punch of Dahlin and Power being two really, really strong first overall pick defensemen, then that could be the tipping point of them pushing for playoffs.
Fair enough.
all right, Red Wings. All right, so last year Detroit Red Wings had a record of 41 wins, 32 losses, and 9 OT losses, which was 5th in the Atlantic. 27 regulation wins, which was 26th in the Atlantic. They missed the playoffs. 3.35 goals for per game, which was 3.33 goals against per game, which was 24th. 23.1% power play, which was 9th, and 79.6% PK, which was 14th. Their average age is 28 years old.
Well, if you're a real hockey fan like I am, if you look at all the green highlighted names that you can't see because it's on our thing, all the new additions except Eric Gustafson are ex-Ottawa Senators. So, yes, they have DeBrincat, but as well, their new additions are Tarasenko, Cup champ and Senators legend. Tyler Mott, Senators legend. Alex Chiasson, Senators legend. And Austin Watson. Also, Marco Kasper is fighting for a fourth line role. Then we have Eric Gustafson, the addition on defense. And they also have Cam Talbot, who used to play for the Ottawa Senators, in goal and probably going to be their starter.
Who knows?
The key departure being David Perron, Robbie Fabry, Daniel Sprong, Shane Gostisbehere, Jake Wallman, James Reimer.
All right. This lineup is looking like this. We got first line DeBrincat, Larkin, and Raymond. Pretty sure they're going to stay together. Tarasenko, Comfort, and Patrick Kane are their second line. Comfort and Kopp are pretty interchangeable, so it could be either one of them at 2 or 3. And then Rasmussen and Fisher round out their top 9 with Bergeron, Veleno, Mott, Chiasson, Kasper, and Watson all fighting for the last spots on the team. Their defense is Ben Sherratt, Moritz Seider as their top pair, Jeff Petrie and Simon Edmondson as their second pair, and then Mata, Gustafson, and Justin Hall are fighting for the bottom spots in that defense. I have 3 goalies listed here. There's about 5 that are competing for spots and could play this year. Cam Talbot is the most recognizable name, with Billy Husso and Alex Lyon. They're going to be in some kind of timeshare. Jack Campbell is also on a deal. And then they also have one of the better goalie prospects in the league, in Sebastian Casa, who could also get a chance at some point. So yeah, I'm starting this one off, and I'm going to tell you guys I have this team in 8th place in the Atlantic Division.
Whoa.
I like some of their players on offense. I like DeBrincat. I like Raymond. Larkin's good. Kane, Tarasenko, older. The rest of that offense doesn't really do much for me, especially their center situation after Larkin. I'm not really too fond of. Comfort and Kopp are like third liners on pretty much every team, like even the Bruins, which says a lot. But it's not just that. I don't like. They have 5 goalies or 4 goalies plus a rookie goalie, and I don't have any confidence in any of them. But on top of that, that decor is one of the worst decors, the worst decor in the Atlantic, and it is one of the worst decors in the league. Cider, very good. Sherratt, bottom pair on most teams. Jeff Petrie was not good last year, and he's 36. Modic, Gustafson, and Hall are fighting for spots. None of them are great. Edmondson inspires some hope because he's a pretty decent player, but he's still young. We don't know what we're going to get out of him. I see this. I honestly just hate the way that this roster was constructed, and I don't see any positive ending with this team.
Wow. All right. Evan, how about you?
I have the Detroit Red Wings in 7th place. Again, kind of like Steve was touching on, not a whole lot of, like, kind of what I touched on in Buffalo and Washington, like game breakers. Those are the teams that usually do really well. While they have a decent amount of good players, like DeBrincat, Larkin, Raymond, Kane, good, Cider, good. Do they have someone that's going to consistently be an elite player game in, game out to get them over that whatever, like 90-point mark they need to get to? I don't know. So, yes, while the first line's good, Sufi touched on Comp, not outstanding, make a lot of money. Tarasenko, Kane, getting older, can be effective. Not the greatest defense core. And then, a lot of pretty mid goalies. So for me, and maybe this is just competition with the team that I like, I don't know, but I don't see it as better than other teams. I think they have continued to improve, but I don't see it as enough of an improvement. And Sufi, I think, brought up either another episode or just talking to me in general. They had a lot of multi-goal comebacks. They won a lot of games in overtime. So is that an achievable thing for them to keep up? Probably not. And so
they were 26th in regulation wins.
Yeah, so that may be another reason why they don't make playoffs as well.
Okay. I struggle with the Wings a little bit because I agree with what you guys said. They're a very underwhelming team apart from a few good offensive guys. The reason why I struggled is because, they were 27th or 26th in regulation wins, but they were right on the wild card marker. I think they were tied in points with the Washington Capitals, and they just missed. They were both had 91 points or something, and then Detroit missed by because of regulation wins, they lost the tiebreaker or something. I don't know. But they were pretty close, and they ended 4th or something in the division last year. I can't remember, but so I was a little bit torn as to, do I make them improve or. But considering that, I do think with Allmark and stuff, the Sens are a lot better and everything. So I'm keeping them in sixth spot.
Fair enough. It's hard to do X factors for teams that you have finishing 8th. I'm not gonna lie. My X factor is DeBrincat. I like DeBrincat as a player. I think he went from underrated to overrated back to underrated pretty quickly. And he's really flourished as a playmaker in Detroit and a bit in Ottawa as well. But I think the thing for me now is I think he needs to find some of that goal scoring touch that he had back in Chicago. He's hovering around 25 to 28 goals the last few years. I think we need to see that number get to 35 again, because he has the ability to do so. He has the ability to score that many goals because his shot's pretty damn good. So maybe he needs to defer less. Maybe he needs to he led the team in shots, but I think he can get more than 237 shots. So yeah, I think him getting to mid-30s in goals will definitely maybe help this team not finish in 8th like I have them.
I have it as Patrick Kane. I think if they want to be good, then they need really no regression from some of their older players, such as Kane and Tarasenko. Maybe Petrie stays at an okay level, and their goalies being kind of old as well. So if Kane can hover around or stay around point per game, and if he plays a full season and has like 80 plus points, that's huge. Like, maybe he struggles with injuries again. Maybe he falls off because he's in his mid to late 30s. I don't know. But if he can be an addition for $4 million, scoring point per game, that's a reason why they could push for playoffs.
Lucas Raymond for me, again, young guy, on the first line with Larkin. I think both of them feed off each other a lot, and DeBrincat as well. I think that line depends on all three of those guys playing at their A game. So Lucas Raymond at 22 years old, if he can take a big step this year, that can transcend them from 6th to, again, something like last year, 4th place, something like that. I think it can make a difference.
Bro, originally I was going to have just goaltending, like goaltending as an X factor, as just like I was on the sheet. I was just going to have goaltending because I have no idea who's actually going to be their starter. It could be Jack Campbell for all we know.
Next up is the Florida Panthers. The Florida Panthers of last season had a 52-24-6 record. They were first in the Atlantic. 42 regulation wins, which was 5th in the league. They were the Stanley Cup champions last season. 3.23 goals for per game, which was 11th in the league. 2.41 goals against per game, which is first. 23.5 power play percentage, which was 8th, and 82.5 PK percentage, which was 6th. And their average age is 27 years old. On the LTIR, they have Nosek.
So on forward, quite a few rookies trying to make the lineup. They have Samoskevich, Gillies, and Sordif fighting for spots on the forward group as rookies. They also have AJ Greer and Entwistle trying to compete for lower in the lineup positions. On defense, they have Nate Schmidt and Adam Boqvist that have been added. And then in net, they brought back Chris Drieger to be a third string. Some of the key departures they had were Senators legend Tarasenko, Senators legend Nick Cousins,
Leafs legend now,
Lawrence, Stenlund, Okposo, Montour, Ekman Larson, and Anthony Stolarz.
Well, 3 guys that came to Toronto. Look at that.
Wow.
Damn. All right, so their top 6 remains pretty unchanged for Hagee, Barkov, Kachuk, Rodriguez, Bennett, and Reinhart as their top 6. I think Tarasenko mostly played on the 3rd line last year, and Samoskevich is looking to take over that spot with Lindell and Luosterainen. After that, it gets pretty dicey. So Nosek is their 4th line center technically. They signed him for that purpose. But he is injured for the first few weeks. So Patrick Giles is getting an extended look over there with Mackenzie Entwistle as well. And then Greer, Gadjevich, Boqvist, and Sourdiff are competing for those final spots. Defense, couple of new additions. Forsling, Ekblad, Mikola, and Kulikov is pretty much the same top 4 as last year. But Nate Schmidt replaces OEL on the bottom pair and Boqvist instead of Mahura, I guess. With Bjorn Fott and Balinskis as extra defensemen. Sergei Bobrovsky is back, and Spencer Knight is also back as their backup after spending the entire year, except for some of the playoffs, in the player assistance program. And then, Chris Drieger is their 3rd string. Evan?
I have the Florida Panthers finishing 1st in the Atlantic Division. They won the Cup last year. Their top 6 is pretty unreal. They have an elite center. They have one of the best wingers. They have one of the leading goal scorers that isn't one of the people I just named in the NHL. They have Verhaeghe, who had 40 goals. They have guys that will annoy the shit out of you. They have guys who will just play their game. Like, they have such a diverse top 6 that I really like it. And a guy named Evan. So, first Evan to ever win the Stanley Cup. Bottom 6, not as good, obviously, but I think that top 6 could carry. On defense, They have some size on it. Ekblad, Mikkola. They also have a really good defensive defenseman, or two-way defenseman, Gustav Forslane. Nate Schmidt has experience. And then in net, they had the goalie who essentially did whatever they wanted for them in the playoffs. And then they have decent depth at goal as well if he starts to trail off at his age. So yeah, I still think they are going to be an elite team. And so I have them in first place.
I had them in second place. Same place as you. Just had an amazing top six. They've got some underrated players as well. I think with Tkachuk coming off, like it was 80 something points, but that was a off year for him, considering he had 200 points, 100 plus point seasons before that. So I think he's probably going to bounce back and maybe come back to that level again as well. This team hasn't taken a step back or anything. I think they're going to be. They could be first. I'm a Leafs fan, so I'm going Leafs first. Spoiler alert, but Florida second.
I have the Florida Panthers in second place. I think that they pretty much face the same question marks that every Stanley Cup winning team has, where a lot of guys cash out because they're on a Stanley Cup winning team, so they either cash out with the current team or they go and cash out in separate teams like Montour did, Tarasenko, Ekman-Larsson, Stolarz, those kinds of guys. They're not big enough pieces to drop this team anywhere near out of the playoffs. Like, they're definitely a lock to make the playoffs. But I do have them at second because there are some question marks for me, mostly in terms of goaltending and defense. I think their offensive depth is not great, but I think that they have enough in their top nine to get it done for sure in goals for. But the defense with Ekblad, I think, being the biggest question mark for me, mostly because of health. And ever since coming back from injury too, he hasn't been the same. So I'm curious to see what level he plays at, especially because Montour is gone, so he's going to be back on the first power play. So he kind of has to produce like he used to. And also Bobrovsky he did enough in the playoffs because he won the cup, but he was very inconsistent in the playoffs. He was also very inconsistent in the regular season, but he still ended up with really good numbers. So the years prior to that, he was rocking some pretty average numbers. And then, last year he kind of found it again, but was still majorly inconsistent. So I'm curious to see how that all works out at age 36, but I still have them at second. Evan?
My X factor is, I was going to say their top pair, but I'm going to go with Ekblad. If Brandon Montour is gone now as well as OEL, so for them to still have a strong defense as a team overall, they're going to need those top two guys to play a lot more games. So for me, it's Ekblad's health and playing a lot more games at a high level for them to have continued success.
For me, it's Barkov, not because I think he has to perform in any certain way, because it's Barkov, he's going to perform. I just think he's an X factor because, I don't know, I would consider him probably the most underrated center in the division or in the league. I don't know. I think he's really underrated. I think especially ever since Tkachuk came over, Tkachuk gets a lot of the limelight. Last year, Reinhart got a lot of the limelight because of his 50-goal season. I think Bobrovsky even gets a decent amount of limelight, but I think Barkov does so much everywhere on the ice that he's always going to be the X factor.
My X factor is Reinhart. I think that 57 goals on 233 shots is wild. Like that's got to be one of the lower shooting 50-goal seasons. So I think that he's not going to score 50 again. Or at least I don't think he will. But I think him remaining at a high level is going to be important to this team. Especially on that second line. Like, Bennett and Rodriguez are 40-point guys. Like, they haven't really ever been more than that. So him kind of carrying that line is going to be pretty important again.
Okay, next up we have the Montreal Canadiens. So the Montreal Canadiens of last season had 30 wins, 36 losses, and 16 OT losses, which was 8th in the Atlantic. They had 20 regulation wins, which was 30th. They missed the playoffs. 2.83 goals for per game, which was 26th, and 3.43 goals against per game, which was 27th. 17.5 power play percentage, which was 27th, and 76.5 PK percentage, which was 24th. Average age is 25. And currently on LTIR, you have Carey Price. So I completely forgot that. Yeah, he's still on LTIR. Patrick Laine, unfortunately, with the recent knee injury. Reinbacher, RHP, which stands for what? What's RHP again? Who's RHP?
Ridiculously high prices, like the grocery stores are having these days. What the heck?
Who's RHP?
Raphael Harvey Pinard. Raphael Harvey Pinard.
Oh, Raphael Harvey Pinard. Okay, those are all together.
All right.
New additions. Patrick Laine on LTIR now, but hopefully back in the lineup in not too long.
Just IR, not LTIR. Thank goodness.
IR. Alex Barré-Boulet, French speaker. I'm sure the entire province of Quebec is happy about that. Potential rookies that are fighting for spots, and I feel like a lot of these guys are going to make the team. Joshua Roy at forward, and then we have Mayu and Hudson and Reinbacher. Reinbacher's defenseman? Forward.
Yeah, but he's out 5 to 6 months, so.
Yeah, but all young defensemen fighting for spots. I feel like all I hear about is, oh my gosh, this young defenseman from Montreal's going to be so good. Yeah. Shut up. Let's see what they do first.
Now, if we said the same thing about Yamachuk.
Yeah, because he's lighting it up. These guys, has Reinbacher scored in preseason? No.
Reinbacher's hurt.
I know. That's why I picked him.
Don't pick a guy while he's down.
And then some key departures: Tanner Pearson, Jordan Harris, and Jonathan Kovacevic.
All right, this lineup's looking a little different with Laine being hurt, obviously, but Caulfield, Suzuki, Slavkovsky. After Slavkovsky got moved to that line, lit it up pretty much in the second half of the year. You get Kirby Dach back healthy as their second line center with Newhook and not Laine. We're back to Armia on the second line there. Joshua Roy Waugh has been playing on the third line all preseason, and it seems like he has that spot locked up, and he's going to be playing with Dvorak and Josh Anderson, and then Brendan Gallagher, Jake Evans are definitely going to be on the fourth line. Pezzetta, Barboulay, and Heineman are competing for that last spot. Mike Matheson and Caden Gooley are your top pair. Hudson is going to be playing with Savard in his first season, assuming he makes a team, but it looks like it's heading in that direction. And then the bottom pair is going to be a bit of a revolving door between Xhekaj, Barron, and Struble. Logan Mailloux is fighting for a spot. He may make the team, he may not. And then their goaltending tandem is Montembeault and Primo. Homer.
All right, this one's me first. Okay, with the Montreal Canadiens, so I think this year Suzuki, Caulfield, Slavkovsky, these guys will all take steps. Obviously, Laine being injured, it affects them in the first couple of months or so, but hopefully when he's back, he makes the difference we think he can make. I have them ending in 7th.
Fair enough. I actually had them in 6th until Laine got hurt. I think that kind of just makes a huge difference to their offense. So I have them in 7th now. I do like a lot of their rookies, and I think that Roy, Waugh, and Hudson for sure are going to contribute quite a bit this year. And I think Hudson's going to get a very extended look on the first power play, which is going to help them a lot. But I think that Caulfield, Suzuki, and Slavkovsky last year in the second half were like one of the better lines in hockey in terms of production, analytics, of everything. So I think them being put together and kept together, keeping that consistently, is going to be very beneficial to this team. So I think that alone, plus, I think a lot of their offensive depth is in like crazy or anything, but it's got a lot of experience in their depth with Dvorak, Anderson, and Gallagher, and Jake Evans even. So I think that if they can hold on for dear life until Laine comes back, and they'll be able to potentially score more goals after that. I think him coming back in 2 months would be ideal. If he can come back before the new year, then this team can potentially make a push for like 6th or 5th spot. But I have them at 7th currently.
So I have the Canadians in 8th place. I think some of the injuries, Price being out, tough loss.
And they don't have anyone that looks like Price either.
Yeah. They have a lot of really young players hoping to make this lineup. Who knows how well they'll do. They have a first line, and then after that, it's pretty okay. Now, even their defense core, like that first pair is probably like more of like a third pair on a really good team. And then
I wouldn't say third pair. Come on,
either.
Third pair.
And the fact that their goalies haven't had a ton of, neither of these guys have started ever. They've only been like backups or third strings. So we'll have to see how they do. Losing Laine and Reinbacher, and then having a lot of rookies in the lineup. We'll see how it goes. I think they may not end up last, but I just think that with some of the losses and question marks, I don't see them doing that strongly, and have them in last in the Atlantic.
All right. X factor for the Montreal Canadiens, I think right now is Patrick Laine. I think it was Patrick Laine for me to begin with as well, even more so now that he's injured. Him coming in, it's a brand new scenario for him. He's on a team now where I think he's going to be happier than he's been when he was on Winnipeg and when he was on Columbus. He is kind of the go-to scorer on this team. He's going to be the go-to power play guy on this team. I wouldn't be surprised if the power play runs around Laine. So he's going to get lots of opportunities to, get back to like a 40-goal pace or whatever he's done in his career before he kind of fell off a little bit. I think he's him performing and him being the star he wants to be is going to be what makes a difference for Montreal.
Fair enough. My X factor was this guy before Laine even got hurt. It's Kirby Dach. I think that we've seen flashes from him where he has looked like a very good second liner in this league. The problem is he then gets hurt 40 seconds later. With 2 major injuries in the last couple of seasons. So I think him going into the season healthy is a plus for him. I think he has the potential to be a very good second line center for them. And hopefully when Laine comes back to him and Newhook can help Dach within the points department a little bit at least. But I think him being healthy is already an X factor for them. A lot of defensemen are kind of just there. Some could be top 4 defensemen, etc. So I wasn't really going to pick one of them to be an X factor, but I think team defense is going to be important to them. I think Kirby Dach also is going to help in raising that goal scoring total for them from 26 last year, whatever it was. I think he's going to be just as important as Patrick Laine to get that number up.
So my X factor is Cole Caulfield. Like I said, I don't think this team is making playoffs, so I am looking for individual X factors. So Cole Caulfield, everyone knows that he's a great shooter, and kind of like DeBrincat, who had some 40-goal seasons with the Chicago Blackhawks. I want to see him play a full healthy season, hopefully with that line fully intact, and score 40 goals. I think him really he has the potential to take arguably the biggest, I know we say step all the time, the biggest leap on this team. I think he has the potential to be around a point per game guy, and I think he can score 40 plus goals in the NHL, and I want to see him do that, being paid a lot, and just him being able to get that under his belt before the team's even competitive, giving him more confidence, the team more confidence, would be huge for him, the line, and for the entire city of Montreal.
All right. Our Evan's favorite team, the Ottawa Senators.
Go Sens.
All right. Last year, the Sens had a record of 37 wins, 41 losses, and 4 OT losses. They ended 7th in the Atlantic. 25 regulation wins, which was 27th in the Atlantic. They missed the playoffs again. 3.05 goals for per game, which was 20th in the league, and 3.43 goals against per game, which was 28th. 18% on the power play, which was 23rd, and 75% on the PK, which was 29th. Average age is 27 years old.
One comment I would just say, I would switch Pinto and Norris from what I've seen in preseason. New additions to the Ottawa Senators on forward. They have added David Perron, Noah Gregor, Nick Cousins, and Michael Amadio. And Zach Ostapchuk is fighting for a fourth line role on the Ottawa Senators. Big body used to play at the World Juniors. Fun to watch there. On defense, they added ex-Capital Nick Jensen, as well as rookie Tyler Clevin, hoping to lock down that third defenseman on the left side role. In net, they have Linus Ullmark. That is our unanimous starter, has looked really good in preseason. Some other hopefuls for them that are rookies are Angus Crookshank, Stephen Holiday, and Carter Yakimchuk, hoping to get that third right-handed defenseman spot. Then key departures are Parker Kelly, Dominic Kubalik, Matthew Joseph, Igor Sokolov, Jacob Chikrin, Eric Branstrom, and Jonas Korpisalo.
All right. So the first line is looking like Kachuk, Stützle, Giroux, with Perron and Batherson on the wings of either Josh Norris or Shane Pinto. Currently, Josh Norris, apparently. But yeah, you have everyone's favorite gambling addict and currently in the third line with Ridley, Gregg, and Amadio on his wings. And then Gregor and Cousins are most likely on the fourth line already, with McEwen and Ostapchuk kind of fighting for spots. The defense, you got Sanderson, Zub, Shabbat, all in the top four. The right side, Jensen starting there with JBD, Yakimchuk, Hamonic, all vying for spots on the right side. Clevin, being left-handed, is probably going to get an extended look.
Sorry. He's been getting a lot of calls today.
You're popular.
Clevin, being left-handed, is most likely going to get an extended look on that side and in the top six. Then you have your outright starter in Linus Ullmark and Anton Forsberg as the backup. Dustin Tokarski's on a PTO. I don't know if he's still there or released, but either way, he'd be in the AHL. So, all right. I'm starting with this team. So here's the thing, right? My top three teams in this division are locks. Every team after that has so many question marks, like the Bruins, Buffalo Sabres, Red Wings, and Montreal. Ottawa has no shortage of those questions. You're looking for a lot of You're looking for a lot of bounce backs. I don't think this team is going to finish 20th in goals. I think that's pretty absurd with how good some of these offensive players are. I think we're going to look at a bounce back from Stützle especially. So I think they're going to improve there. The biggest question marks for me are on defense, and I think Zub is probably the safest one. Like I know what to expect from him. Sanderson was bad for parts last year, good for parts last year. Shabbat is the most polarizing figure on this decor. Jensen was really bad last year. Clevin, Yakimchuks are rookies. JBD had his moments. Travis Hamonic, I don't like to talk about. But the biggest difference on this team is goaltending, and it affected this team almost as much as the Devils. Linus Ullmark being there, hopefully playing 45, 50 games for this team, I think is going to make a big enough difference. And with those bounce backs in mind, and the questions on defense I can live with, I have them in fourth.
Evan?
That made me genuinely smile. So I also have the Senators in fourth. I'm going to talk a little bit longer on this one. So I'll go one thing at a time. the difference between other teams like Buffalo would be a good example for me, who added a decent amount of players, is maybe not they're in their prime, but people who are still useful and have won Stanley Cups. David Perron has won a Stanley Cup. Nick Cousins has won a Stanley Cup. Amadi has won a Stanley Cup. Nick Jensen's won a Stanley Cup. And then you added a Vezina Trophy winner from 2 years ago. These are players who know what to do to win, as well as players who are, like Ullmark, just very elite players right now. Perron, someone who can move up and down the lineup. Same with Amadio. Amadio, just like since from watching him in preseason, is a very technical player. Doesn't seem to do anything that well, but he's not bad at anything. Just makes kind of good decisions. Like knows when to dump it in, knows when to throw a shot on net, whatever. Nick Cousins and Noah Gregor. It's grit to the lineup. We already have people like Ridley Gregg, like Kachuk, like McEwen, and like Clevin, who's a big boy. And then apparently I saw an interview, Giroux, Kachuk, Stützle, and sometimes Batherson love to just chirp, which I thought was quite funny. And then, you added, like I said, probably you could argue the best player on the team, Linus Ullmark. He is such a good goalie, seems so calm, cool, and collected. Like even he made a crazy save the other game and he just kind of looked at the player and smiled. Like he's like so like taking it easy and just trying to like focus on the moment. It's really kind of cool to see. Even in preseason, him doing that well and just feeling confident and he's going to make a save or the save we need. So, like I said, and then something else I was going to touch on is Kachuk had 357 shots and had 37 goals. I would almost guarantee at some point in his career he's going to have a higher shooting percentage like a lot of players do. They have that 1 year where they just kind of go crazy. I don't know if it's going to be this year, but I could see a year where he maybe even scores 50 goals or close to it because he just gets all the bounces that he needs and because he's taking so many shots. So with that being said, I think they have a really good top six in my opinion. They have a bunch of guys that could score 30 goals or around 30 goals and guys who could have 70 plus points. I think Drake Batherson's really underrated. He trains with Marchand, Crosby, and McKinnon, and he is super creative. On defense, what I'm hoping is Zub and Shabbat, Zub being the best defensive defenseman with our more high risk, good skating, but defenseman in Shabbat, who apparently had wrist issues all of last year as well. And then having Jensen and Sanderson or even Yakimchuk. Yakimchuk has had 2 goals and 4 assists in the preseason. He's big. He moves really well for a big guy. So wouldn't be opposed to having him up at least for the 9 games. Then you have Hamonic, who apparently came in really good shape. Obviously, he's not outstanding, but that's another guy who used to play a top 4 on multiple NHL teams for a long time. So even just having him as a 7th defenseman, I think is probably good overall for the team. Hoping good things for Anton Forsberg as well, coming back late last year from a pretty horrific injury. And so hoping he's going into the season feeling 100%. So I'm hopeful. I feel like usually I'm pretty pessimistic or pretty realistic. Like I wouldn't be surprised if they miss the playoffs this year, genuinely, even if they have a pretty decent team on paper. I want to see some improvements. In preseason, they haven't had a completely full lineup in a game yet. There's some things like some odd man rushes and stuff like that I'd like to see cleaned up before the season starts. But I have them in 4th right now.
All right. I also have them in 4th. I won't go as in depth as Evan just did because he's very passionate about the Ottawa Senators. Okay, I like Ullmark coming in. I like they've got Pinto this year for the whole year. I think Stützle is gonna be better. I hit the under on Kachuk, so I'm not gonna count on him hitting 40 or 50 goals. The Sens have burned me 2 years in a row because every year I think this and I'm like, you know what? The team looks not bad. Like maybe they can push for a playoff spot or something. And then they just end up 7th or 8th. So I'm wary of saying they're going to end 4th. But that being said, I have faith in some of the players on the team. I have faith in Ullmark to make them a lot better. I don't have faith in and will not. Like I can guarantee from right now Ullmark makes them better. I can't guarantee, but I don't have faith that Travis Green makes them better. So I've been harping on Travis Green ever since the signing because he has done nothing to prove that he deserves a coaching job in the NHL. But the fact that he has it, if he surprises us, that's great. But until I see a team that performs well on the ice and is doing well in the standings, I can say Allmark's going to help them. I can't say Travis Green's going to help them. So 4th place.
I could have predicted like everything that you just said there.
Yeah. But yeah, that's
So-
what I think. I mean, 4th is not bad. 4th is good.
Yeah, it's fair enough. I mean, we all had him a 4th.
Yeah.
We just have different
Yeah.
final standings, so that's fair. My X factor was going to be Josh Norris at one point, but I think that's pretty chalk. So I'm going to go a little different direction here. Jake Sanderson is my X factor. I think that because I think the offense is going to perform regardless of if Norris is, his mid 30s in goals or whatever he was, or if he's a shell of himself. I don't think that's going to affect the offense that much. I think that Sanderson is in a similar position to what Evan was talking about with Power, where he has all this potential, and we've seen like good play from him at times, and we see him being this like elite defenseman at some point. I think that if they're going to make the playoffs this year, a lot of that is going to be on the back of Sanderson being that elite defenseman. I don't really care about his offense that much. I think that whether he's on the power play or not, he's going to end up with like 40, 50 points. But for me, he's got to have a big jump in terms of his defensive play. And I'm going to need to see the kind of defenseman that the Ottawa Senators fans talk about actually perform like that throughout the entire year. And I think that's going to be the most important thing with their team, because I think helping out Ullmark as much as they can is going to be important, so that he's not just completely shelled every single game. But yeah, also like I have so many question marks on this defense, so I was going to pick one of the defensemen anyway. But Sanderson for me is the most important one, because we've seen probably the best him play better than anyone else on this defense by a mile, but we've also seen him be pretty bad at times last year as well. So I think we need to see the highest level from him this year for them to make that jump to the playoffs.
So my X factor was, I could have gone a lot of different ways. I like the Norris shout, if you want to use that. But I'm going to go Yakimchuk, because I feel like on defense, we like probably our weakest position. I don't think we're incredibly weak in any position, but I think, yes, it's like not outstanding. So if Yakimchuk can come in and be NHL ready as an 18-year-old, 19-year-old, that would be huge, especially because the right side, especially the third pairing, maybe Jensen slides down, I don't know, would be really nice, to be honest, because like I said, he's a big body. He can move the puck really well. Yes, he's not the most gifted guy, but if you play him with probably Sanderson, if he were to make it full time, that's a guy who, like Suvi said, hopefully can be kind of more of a defensive anchor and can move the puck as well a lot too. And he can learn from guys who've been in the NHL longer and can play similar styles to him. So for me, I would feel a lot more confident if he continues to play well and can make the lineup and solidify kind of our sixth defenseman and have a lot of size on the defensive side. Like Sanderson's not small, Zub's not small, Shabbat is kind of a lighter guy. He doesn't really hit or anything, but then Jensen, Clevin, and Yakimchuk, again, like I think Clevin and Yakimchuk are some bigger bodies too, which we could have needed, like having Brandstrom and Gannett play some games last year. You look at teams that make it far in the playoffs, often they have size on the back end. And if he's making the team looking good as an 18-year-old, I'm excited to see what he can do in the future.
Homer?
Oh, yes, it's me. Yeah. I'm just going to stick with the obvious. It's Ullmark. If they make the playoffs this year, it's going to be because of Ullmark. And he's going to, like he did for Boston, he's going to hide a lot of the question marks they have on defense. So he'll come in and do what he needs to do. I could see them putting at least another, between 5 and 10 wins just on the board in the season just because of his saves. So, yeah.
I would like to add the Norris point that Sufi said, like, at one point he played like 66, 67 games and had 35 goals. That's incredibly impressive. But this guy's had 3 shoulder surgeries or whatever things done to his shoulder. So for just on a human level, I hope for the guy he doesn't get hurt, because how mentally tough that would be for him, not even just alone on his body. And I don't expect him to score 30 goals. If he does, amazing. But if he can just play like 60 plus games and contribute at an all right level, like if he could have 40 points in 65, 70 games, I think that's a win for the Senators and for him. Maybe they give him some rest games. I don't know. But I think, he just seems like such a nice guy and just wants to be back playing in the NHL. And so I just hope the best for him. And if he can get back to where he was, outstanding. But I just hope his health is good overall.
The Tampa Bay Lightning. Last year's record of 45 wins, 29 losses, and 8 OT losses was good enough for 4th in the Atlantic. 37 regulation wins was 10th. They lost in round 1 to the Florida Panthers. 3.51 goals for per game was 5th in the league, and 3.26 goals against per game was 22nd. 28.6 power play percentage was 1st in the league, and 83.3% PK was 5th in the league. Their average age is 28 years old.
Some of the new additions on forward are Jake Gensel. They have Zemgus Girgensons, Cam Atkinson, and Jesse Ylonen. Some guys hoping to make the lineup are Connor Geekie, as well as
Gage Goncalves.
Goncalves? Where did my baby cows go? They're Goncalves. Now on defense, they have J.J. Moser added, as well as reacquiring Ryan McDonough. And then they have Maxwell Crozier, hoping to have that 7th spot. Then we also have some key departures being Steven Stamkos, Anthony Duclair, Tanner Jeannot, or Tyler Jeannot, followed by Tyler Mott, Mikhail Sergachev, Matt Dumba, and Calvin DeHaan. So some pretty big names going out.
All right. So Gensel, Point, and Kucherov is pretty much solidified as their first line and has looked pretty nasty in preseason. Hagel and Cirelli are locked in their top 6, and then any combination of Sheary, Atkinson, maybe someone like Connor Geekie can get a look in there as a rookie. Could be in their top 6, but Sheary is currently with Hagel and Cirelli. And then you got Chaffee, Paul, and any of those right wingers I just named. And then Girgensons and Glendening are pretty solidified in that 4th line, with Ylonen, Goncalves, and Esimont fighting for those last 4th line spots. Their top 4, Hedman, Chernak, Moser, and Perbix. And then McDonough and Radish are their bottom pair, with Liljeberg and Crozier as extras. And then Vasilevsky and Johansson are back as goalies. So, Evan, you can start this one off.
So I have the Tampa Bay Lightning at 3rd in the division. I think they've been good for a long time, and I still think their first line probably rivals most in the NHL, if not all of them. They have a 50 goal centerman. They have 100 point, or almost 150 point with 100 assists, right winger. They have a left winger who can score you probably 40 goals and 40 assists. So really, really top heavy, but, have some depth on forward. On defense, they have, a really good anchor there being Hedman, and Chernak being another perfect kind of pair for him. Big guy, moves pretty well for his size. And then some experience and someone they know in Ryan McDonough coming back. Then, you have a goalie who can be elite among the elite if he really needs to be. So having someone that's good in every position and multiple people who are really, really good at forward, I can see them finishing pretty high in the standings. And so for them, I have them in 3rd in the division.
I also have them 3rd in the division. I think adding Gensel, I know people think Stamkos leaving is probably a big deal, but I think adding Gensel low key probably makes them a little bit better even once before Stamkos. I mean, the power play maybe not, but maybe the 5-on-5 play. Kucherov's going to be amazing. Points still going to be great. I know the defense has gotten kind of worse since they don't have Sergachev anymore and stuff, and Hedman's kind of taken a bit of a step back since a couple of years ago. But it's not a terrible defense. And I think Hedman can still play. I think Vasilevsky's had some rest over the last couple of years by not getting too far in the playoffs. So maybe this year be a bit more fresh. Any nagging injuries or something might be gone, and he might be just kind of back to what he was in those Stanley Cup years. But let's see. He's only 30 still too. So I mean, so I see them ending third as well, third in the division.
All right, I'll be boring. I have them finishing third as well. I think to Omer's point, Gensel does make them a better 5-on-5 team, like quite a bit actually. He's been better. He's been a better 5-on-5 player than Stamkos in the last 4 years. For the last 4 years, and on the power play, it isn't that much of a step back, to be honest. I mean, Gensel can also produce on the power play for sure. But on top of that, I think that I just don't see other Atlantic teams pushing for the spot as much. So I do think that the top 3 Atlantic teams are going to be kind of not far, but I think they're going to be far enough ahead. And I think Tampa, as long as everyone, for the most part, can stay healthy, I do like the depth they have at center, especially, and then they're going to score a ton of goals with that first line, as well as Hedman isn't really great defensively anymore by any means, but he still produces offensively. So I think that helping in that regard also is good. And then, I mean, if we're talking Stanley Cup experience, there's very few teams with as much Stanley Cup experience on their team than Tampa. Even the thing that Tampa does well is they rotate their depth players quite well, and adding guys like Sheary last year, Atkinson this year, I think kind of just speaks to what they do as a team. Evan did mention some pretty key departures leaving, but I think they replaced each of them pretty well. Sergachev being the main one, I think, but the thing is Sergachev played 18 games last year, and they still made the playoffs. So, I think a guy like JJ Moser, who's been a top 4 defenseman for a couple of years now, I think he's going to fit in just fine in that top 4. So yeah, I have them finishing third pretty confidently. Your X Factor, Evan.
So my X Factor is Jake Gensel. I am interested to see how he can fit into a new team, as I'm sure it'll be fine playing with those 2 guys. I was thinking, yes, it would be crazy to see, but it's not out of the realm of possibilities that first line scores something like close to 150 goals. So right there, that's outstanding offense. So I'd like to see, as the big fish being brought in with other key departures, just see how he mixes in and if he can contribute at a similar level to Stamkos on a new team with new players. So yeah, maybe he won't get so distracted by I don't know, sharks. I'm trying to think of what you can find in Florida.
For me, it's also Jake Gensel. I mean, he's going to be the new one coming in. We know how he can play. How is he going to mesh with the team? How does he impact Kucherov and point? How does he impact the power play? How does he impact 5-on-5 play? I think it's going to make a big difference. So yeah, for me, it's Gensel.
I'm pretty confident in Gensel, mostly because of how well he transitioned in Carolina. I think having that experience, transitioning to a new team, is going to help. So I'm not that too worried about him, but I can understand why you guys picked him for sure. I mean, he's one of the biggest signings from this offseason. My X Factor is Victor Hedman. I think that it's his first season as captain, and it's also, you're kind of doing a little bit of damage control from all of the negativity that came out of the Stamkos situation. And as the team captain, you kind of got to be the one to mediate a lot of that. So while his play might have dropped in the defensive department, I think that him contributing on offense, I mean, he scored 76 points last year. If he can come anywhere near that again this year, that'd be great. And, just keeping that culture of winning for this team is going to be a big enough X factor to hopefully see them succeed. Yeah. Let's go on to the last and definitely least team, Toronto.
We saved the best for last, eh? Okay. Okay.
All right. I'll tell you, the Leafs are definitely a team.
Sorry?
The Leafs are definitely a team.
So,
imagine being your team name is a Leaf. How lame is that?
It's one of the oldest lame jokes, okay? Come up with a better one. Okay.
Imagine cheering for a team that hasn't won since 1967.
Imagine cheering for a team that has technically never won.
Actually, technically they have.
Technically
And technically our drought, if you want to go that way, isn't as long as yours by a lot.
But technically the Senators have not won.
Yeah, I mean,
they have. The Ottawa Senators.
They're a younger team, bro. But you don't even have to go that far. Evan, you don't even have to go that far. It's just the
Silver Sevens.
I don't care about the Sens like 1920s trophies. Just the fact that they're a younger team, it means that they have a bit of a pass.
Okay. All right. Anyway, the Toronto Maple Leafs of last season had a record of 46 wins, 26 losses, and 10 OT losses, which was third in the Atlantic. 33 regulation wins, which was 15th. Playoffs. Round 1 loss to the Boston Bruins as usual. 3.63 goals for per game, second in the league, and 3.18 goals against per game, which was 21st. 24% on the power play, which was 7th, and 76.9% on the PK, which was 23rd. Average age is 27. They have Connor Dewar on LTIR.
Where's Muzzin?
And sure, Jake Muzzin.
He's done now.
Isn't his contract over?
Nah.
Yeah.
His contract's done.
Yeah. Well.
All right. On forward for your Toronto Maple Leafs, we have the addition of player tryout Max Pacioretty. We have Fraser Minton trying to squeak in the lineup somewhere. We also have Easton Jared Cowan also trying to make the lineup. On defense, we have added old man Chris Tanev, as well as very old and potentially washed Oliver Ekman-Larsson. We have Hakanpää. What a great name. Then in defense,
why are you talking like this, bro?
A lot of height being added. We have Anthony Stolarz. Hasn't played a lot of games, but I hope he does well because I have him on my fantasy team. And John Gillies as your potentially 17th string PTO goalie because you have Matt Murray and probably like Tokarski you're going to sign from Ottawa. And yeah, so key departures.
Did you say Joseph Woll?
Why would he say Joseph Woll?
Oh, sorry, you're talking about addition. Sorry.
This guy.
My bad.
What a sharp. He's about as sharp as Toronto Maple Leafs fans come, eh, guys?
About as sharp as Elias Samsonov in the playoffs.
We have Tyler Bertuzzi, Noah Gregor, Joel Edmondson, Ilya Lyubushkin, John Klingberg, Mark Giordano. This is a lot of defensemen. Ilya Samsonov and Martin Jones.
The offense is looking a bit different. We got Nyes, Matthews, and Marner as the first line from the playoffs, and they're coming back this year. Tavares and Nylander round out the top 6. One of them will be at center. Tavares could apparently move down in the lineup, but we'll see on that. I don't see how, considering the options are not great. But then you do have Domi, McMahon, Robertson, all potentials on that left side. Maybe Max Pacioretty as well. Pontus Holmberg and David Kampf round out their center core with Kalle Jarnkrok. And Reeves plays like 60 games, so he might not be the full-time on the right side. But then you have guys like Cowan and Midden who are vying for those final spots. And then the defense is where the biggest change is, with Riley and Tanev finally get the right-handed defensive defenseman after all these years. Jake McCabe and Liljegren round out the top 4. OEL and Hakanpää finish out their defense with Benoit and Timmins as extras. And they're trying a new goalie tandem this year in Joseph Woll and Anthony Stolarz. John Gillies is on a PTO.
All right, I guess
we'll start this one with Hummer.
So, Here's how I feel about the 2024-2025 currently created Toronto Maple Leafs. So I do have them ending first in the div. That's more so just because I'm a Leafs fan, and I will say that every year. They could easily end second. They could easily end third. I think any of them are possible. I will have them at first. I'm not so. I understand that technically they got a bit better on defense just by adding Tanev himself, and I think Hawk and Puck can make a difference too. OEL, I'm not really expecting anything out of at this point. I don't know how I feel about the team as a whole right now, just because the coaching situation. I have to see how they play under Berube. I have to see what kind of identity they have. That they're gonna have a new identity under him. What's it gonna be like? What's the system's gonna be like? How's the power play gonna be under Mark Savard? How's their penalty kill gonna be this year, which was pretty bad last year at like 23rd or whatever. There's questions surrounding the team still. And the biggest question for me right now also is the goaltending. Like going with Woll and Stolarz as your two guys, like none of them have been starters. Woll shows potential to be a pretty good goalie, but he can't stay healthy. So the issues that the health status of him is going to be in question. Stolarz is probably going to have to play a bunch more games than he's used to. How's he going to hold up? Matt Murray is not a good third option. And I don't know how Gillies is. He's on a PTO anyway. And yeah, so, I have them first. But let's see. I'm not convinced, that this is a better team than it was. I'm not convinced yet.
All right. I have the Leafs finishing first. I think that they're going to score. I was going to say a swear word. They're going to score a lot of goals. And I think the numbers in terms of goal scoring is going to be pretty similar to last season, where it was 3.63. I think that could be even higher this season. But with Berube, with no Samsonov, with Chris Tanev, I think that number for goals against per game goes up. And I think it goes to around, 10th to 12th in the league. And I think that's going to be enough of a difference for them to end up in first place. Tanev being in the top four is a big difference. But on top of that, I also just think that Berube just has a good enough defensive system. And I think with Woll and Stolarz, if they can somehow manage to keep Woll healthy, I think it'll be their best goaltending performance we're going to see from the Leafs since the Freddie Anderson days. I think we could see that. But it requires a lot of Woll being healthy. But I think they can do that with Stolarz as like an alternating option. But yeah, I think I'm going to save what I'm talking about for the X Factor, because that's also going to be the reason that I would have them at first over Florida. So, Evan?
So I have the Toronto Maple Leafs finishing in second. I love Matthew Knies. I don't know if I've said it before. He's great. Probably the best forward on this team.
All right.
But they have other guys that can score a lot of goals. Like there's a world where they have 300 goal players this next year, which is kind of silly. And Tavares, if he plays a full season, he's usually pretty good for at least 30 and 30, maybe 40 and 40. He's very consistent. Is he $11 million player? No. But I actually do think they have some decent depth. McMahon, Robertson, Yarncrook. Hopefully the depth stays as good if Robertson doesn't attempt to kill Nylander again. Pacioretty being a good goal-scoring depth option. Easton Cowan, a little electric water bug. And then you have some additions on defense. Chris Tanev probably going to be good for a year or two, or at the same level. OEL, if he's a third pair, I think is a really nice option. And then you have some size at Hakanpää. Goaltending, I think, again, is the bigger question mark. Who's going to take over? There's probably a world where both these guys get hurt, or Matt Murray is somehow playing games. I don't know. But it'll be interesting to see how that kind of shakes out. I do think this is more than good enough of a team to make the playoffs. They will lose early in the playoffs, but I do think their regular season will be nice and pretty.
Okay. X factor for me. So there's a few things that you could put X factors on this team this year because there's a number of things that work. You can easily point to goaltending. You can easily point to one of the big guys. I'm going to choose to go in a bit of a different direction just because of the way the offseason played out with someone by the name of Nick Robertson. I think he's going to be an X factor because I think it's time he makes the team or it's decided that he's not going to make the team and he's going to go somewhere else. Because I think he's had enough years where everyone's talking about how, oh, he seems ready. Oh, he seems ready. Training camp. Oh, he seems ready. He seems ready. Preseason. Oh, he seems ready. Season starts. He gets a starting job. And within a few games, he's back down in the Marlies. And he doesn't play the rest of the year with the Leafs. So this year with the whole contract situation with him wanting a trade, I think he's out to prove something. I think there's areas of his game that I love. I think there's areas of his game that I have always wanted to see adapt and change. And one can hope that he's made that change and he can be the kind of player at least he thinks, or at least what the Leafs even think that he can be. So if he makes that difference, that's massive for the Leafs' depth, which is always an issue, especially come playoff time. So if he can fit into a third line role where he can score goals and make a difference and find his game in the NHL, that'll be a huge impact.
Fair enough. So again, what Omer said, you could easily point to goaltending, but this is the reason why I have them in first, is I think that this guy's going to have a massive year. Mitch Marner. He is my X factor, and I think that he has an outside shot at being not only a Selke nominee, but a Selke winner this year. If he can put up the 100+ points that I'm expecting out of him and continue to be a penalty killer, I think that is definitely in the cards. But the other thing is, I think that there's so much discourse surrounding him in a negative sense that it's kind of a prove it year for him, even though realistically, like, Mitch Marner doesn't really have much to prove in terms of like how he can perform in the regular season. I think he's already done that tenfold. But going into a contract here, he's going to want to get as much money as possible, and I think that you want him to take as much momentum as possible from the regular season into the playoffs. And I think that this is kind of the make it break a year for him in that sense, where this core four is not going to be here next year if they don't make it past the first round. They don't make it past this core four isn't going to make it, isn't going to be back next year if they don't make it past the third round. Like, I think that it's cup or bust for this team at this point, in terms of this core being together. And Mitch Marner for me is the most nuclear part of that top four, of those top four players. So the team effectively lives, or this core effectively lives or dies based on how Mitch Marner does this season. So that's why he's my X factor.
I have written down goalies because the Lord knows that this goaltending duo is not going to win a Stanley Cup, let alone a couple rounds in the playoffs. So if one of these guys emerges as a number one starter, I mean, Stolarz is 30 and he might have an opportunity to be a starter for the first time. It'd be pretty late. Woll needs to stay healthy. Murray needs to stay healthy. John Gillies needs to continue his PTO. That's the X factor for me. Like, I don't see this team winning anything, obviously. But
likewise, to the Saints.
Yeah, well, too late, buddy. My team's making playoffs. You heard it from Sufi. So, goaltending is the big question mark. We'll see what happens.
Bro, Connor Timmins is 6 years old, by the way. Anyways, so I will say one thing on Walton Stolarz. You are right about Stolarz. He's never really gotten the opportunity. Last year was, I think he played 30 games or whatever. He's not necessarily injury prone. The thing is, we've never seen him be anything more than a 30-game player. So Walton Stolarz, I think the best course of action for the Leafs, regardless of who's playing better, just do one game on, one game off. because there's no point in risking injury with Wall. Like, I think both of them are good enough goalies where you can kind of alternate who plays, and saving Wall for the playoffs is task number one, because that's the guy that you want to start in the playoffs. You don't want to start Stolarz in the playoffs. You didn't extend Wall to start Stolarz in the playoffs. So I think they're going to want the health of their goalies is as important as it gets for any team. Let's go through our teams or our standing predictions then.
I have the Montreal Canadiens in 8th place.
I have the Buffalo Sabres in 8th place.
I have the Detroit Red Wings in 8th place. We all have someone different for the first time.
Yeah.
I have the Detroit Red Wings in 7th place.
I have the Montreal Canadiens in 7th place.
I got the Habs in 7th place.
I have the Buffalo Sabres in 6th place.
I have the Detroit Red Wings in 6th place.
I got the Sabres in 6th place.
I got Boston in 5th.
Boston in 5th.
Boston in 5th.
Ottawa Senators in 4th.
Ottawa Senators in 4th.
Sens in 4th. And making the playoffs.
And making playoffs for me too.
Homer does not have them making playoffs.
Tampa in 3rd.
Tampa in 3rd.
Tampa in 3rd.
Toronto in 2nd.
Florida in 2nd.
Florida in 2nd.
And Florida in 1st.
Toronto in 1st.
Regretfully, the Leafs in 1st.
All right. So those were our Atlantic previews heading into the new season. Let us know what you think. Please don't hate us. These are just our thoughts. If we have your team low, we hope we're wrong.
Unless you're the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Please tune in on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music,
Stitcher,
iHeartRadio, SiriusXM. Check us out on YouTube and follow us on TikTok, Instagram, and X at The Unfortunate Diehards. And we'll see you after the season starts.